from talking about things that weren't practical, let's talk about something that's actually practical, something that I care a lot about, misinformation. More importantly, how to stop it. All right. We live in a time of unprecedented knowledge. A single issue of the New York Times has more information than the average person would come across in their entire life in the year 1820. Unfortunately, not all information is equal. The internet has made the spreading of misinformation so much easier, as our inability to combat the lies that surround us is woefully inadequate to the task at hand. Though this is a tough topic for me to ponder ethically, my biggest pet peeve is misinformation. I love it when people correct me if I'm wrong, and the easiest way to make me angry is by knowingly saying incorrect things. In my understanding of politics and ethics, I will fight to the death for a person to spread misinformation. Freedom of speech must remain unblemished in any conversation of fake news. The moment any idea or form of expression is barred from public discourse, by force of law, we create the space for authoritarianism. Any country that doesn't have a version of the U.S.'s First Amendment is an inferior country. Suck it, France.
I agree.
Suck it, UK. That's more accurate. The downside of giving people freedom is the freedom to be morons. Here is a fact. We all engage in misinformation. On the podcast, I have said many things after further research that were proven untrue. Our breakdown of UFC 263, I incorrectly asserted that marijuana was illegal in Arizona, even though it was legalized on November 3rd of 2020. I made a mistake and I own up to it. I promised my audience that I will be better in the future and at least not repeat that false statement. Other people don't have those same ethical convictions. Over the course of the pandemic, I've had to debunk a multitude of articles and videos. I had to convince my mother that Joe Biden wasn't a superhuman who fell down the flight of stairs and bounced like a rubber band ball. My dad received hundreds of WhatsApp messages pertaining to vaccine hoaxes and forwarded many of them to me. My parents are good people. But it's hard not to take misinformation from your friends take information from your friends seriously. According to an article published in the American Association for the Advancement of Science, older folks are more likely to believe an article based on the proximity of the user who shared it with them than any traditional measures of validity. In plain English, they believe their friends over anyone else. On some level, I can empathize with them. They grew up in a world where the best source of information were the people they knew, not accredited scientific journals. We live in the amount of information they see online. We live with an amount of information that they see online as intimidating, and no doubt prevents them from delving deeper. Fake news is also sexier. Fake news articles get spread 70% more on average than verified sources. There's a good reason for that. Fake news is simple. It's easier to claim that COVID-19 is caused by 5G towers. Most people don't really understand either very well, and if there's a correlation between infections and 5G towers, say in cities, which are densely populated and have a lot of both, some people could immediately become suspicious. Throw in a fake study about EM waves causing lung cancer and create a narrative about boogeyman like Bill Gates wanting to microchip everyone. You could rile a lot of people to burn down a couple of 5G towers. Some people are lazy, stupid, and full of passion. They won't take the time to understand the complexity of the world. That's just a no on them. That's just not in them. But a convenient story, they'll eat a dozen of those. The final factor we need to consider ourselves is politics. Conservatives spread nearly 7 times more fake news than on platforms like Facebook. They're very emotional beings. If you tell them that immigrants aren't coming to kill them and just want to make them enchiladas, they won't believe you. They're more likely to spread something that matches a grander narrative, not heterodox thinking, than they would in order to challenge ideas and assertions that they could think are true but are not. The conservatives' unwillingness to challenge themselves makes them more susceptible to spreading misinformation and overall making life much more difficult for every other sane person on this planet. So, Daniel, I have a question. How do we responsibly deal with misinformation?
This is sort of it's a hard question because you love freedom so much.
I love freedom so much.
Misinformation is, to control misinformation is
a threat to freedom. Yes. But misinformation itself is a threat to freedom. Yeah, I'm in a double bind here. There's not really much I can do.
Everything, like we said, everything is a double bind when it comes to freedom. But man, first of all, so conservatives spread nearly 7.
Well, their ideology depends on misinformation.
So do you think? So do you think conservatism is like objectively
stupid? Yes.
Stupid. Okay.
Yes.
Just to make that clear. Okay. Interesting.
I would agree on like conservatism in a moral sense. Moral conservatism and social conservatism inherently stupid. Conservatism in the United States mega stupid.
Okay, so you don't think it's just a difference in values compared to liberals? You think it's like literally just unscientific, like?
For most people, yeah. There are some people who have genuine conservative beliefs because they have conservative morality, in which case they're just bad people. The way that I view most conservatives is either they're good people who are just really dumb and haven't really put a lot of thought into things, or they're fundamentally bad people and want to harm the world.
And want to harm the world?
Yes. Well, what they think is making the world better, but will fundamentally harm the world.
Interesting. I feel like conservatives would say that about you.
Oh, definitely. They have every right to. Which is why I don't spend a lot of time talking to conservatives on problems. I'd much rather just say, oh, you care about something? I care about something similar to that. Let's agree on this. For the most part, most conservatives don't have a consistent ideology. Like I told you before, right? People who are pro-life are not necessarily pro-life when it comes to ending wars or getting rid of the death penalty or making sure the children have enough to eat. You know, there's a lot of inconsistency in conservatism that, quite frankly, is dumb. What's worse than conservatism is nationalism. That's the next level of stupidity. And further level of that is fascism.
Before I comment on the misinformation thing, I want to respond to.
Yes.
So I have been trying to figure out the same question, which is like whether different beliefs are sort of objectively equal but based on different values, or both based on different values, but also some are literally just objectively worse than others. So like, for example, like, is Nazism actually worse than, you know, Stalinism, for example? Like, those are the opposite extremes. Do they actually, are they just differences in values, or?
So if we talk about political ideology,
so one thing you were saying is like pro-life, how conservatives claim they're pro-life, but they don't actually care about the lives of children. Is that actually the case? So here's the thing. So something that I noticed is that a lot of democratic policies sound good. Like they sound very altruistic and beneficial, but I think the conservative argument, from just knowing conservatives and talking to them about it, or like online, their whole argument is that just because something sounds good doesn't mean it's good in the long run. So that's like the whole argument for why they don't think socialism.
Conservatives looking in the long run, looking at data. Yeah, I'll see. I'll believe it when I see it.
Intellectually, it doesn't. I mean, theoretically, it doesn't have to be empirical. But like, for example, the whole argument for free market capitalism is based on the idea that just because it sounds good to distribute wealth, doesn't mean that it will actually lead to greater flourishing in the long run, and that because of the hidden forces of, like, you know, the what's called the hand,
the market,
invisible
hand
yes,
of the market.
Yes. That will lead to greater outcomes in the long run.
No. For a lot of conservatives, they don't view it as good outcomes. That's not how they view it. They view it more deontologically as people get what they deserve. Have you ever heard of strict father morality?
Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of conservatives, a lot of people who are conservatives, especially socially and morally, they believe that what you get, how you're treated, is intrinsically tied to your value. So in the just world hypothesis, good things happen to good people, bad things happen to bad people. So if something bad happened to you, you're by definition a bad person. Conservatives usually, and there's some heterodox thinking here and there, they're in favor of hierarchy that's very traditional in the sense that they believe in a system, even sometimes meritocratically, where good people are on top and they control and they lead everyone. That's why they love CEOs. They love CEOs. They're like, oh my God, that person is great. He worked so hard. He built his own business. They love the idea of small business. They don't actually like small businesses. They love the idea of small businesses. A person who works hard, they can build something for themselves. And all these people who are takers, moochers, we don't need to subsidize them. That's a lot of the motivations for something. There's a lot of, they're not looking at data. They're not thinking, does X policy create better outcomes than Y policy? They're thinking in terms of, what do people deserve?
So that's a monolith. I mean, that's like a monolith argument, which is that all conservatives are not, you're not saying all, but
no, not all. I would say most social conservatives think that way.
Think that. Okay.
Now, there's some people who are actually just single issue voters. They don't really care about anything other than abortion, guns. In some way, I view them way more at like a way higher intellectual level than other conservatives who adopt.
This is actually really funny because, so at our school, Ben and I, we talked about, we drew a graph with IQ and liberal and conservative. So let's say, okay, for you guys, this is right and this is left. So
stay close to the mic.
Okay, this is right and this is left. Going up is IQ. So you start with the conservatives on the right, and then once you reach a certain threshold of pretty smart, you get super liberals, and then at the very top, you get conservatives, and then back to liberals. So the reason for this is that the monolith of people that you're talking about who vote based on this, what was it, the something dad idea?
Strict father morality.
Dad. Strict father morality. Yeah, they're the ones at the bottom who they're not really
Emotional.
considerate. Yeah, emotional. They're not really considerate of like the actual economic effect, whatever. And then you have liberals who are aware of that, and they're like, okay, these people are too emotional. We need to think about things, more logically. But they fall into the trap of being too empathetic and also having a similar issue as the conservatives, um, which is that they're not taking into account the possibility of positive effects through seemingly like worse policies in their eyes. Like some conservative policies that seem less generous might actually lead to better outcomes. So that's what happens. And then you have conservatives who see through that, and then at the top you have which we feel is probably the equilibrium. What is the actual best policy? That was kind of complicated, but
Yeah, I don't buy that. Someone like Ben Shapiro, who's so-called an intellectual on the right, I think he's a moron. I'll debate him any moment. I think he's a complete moron. What he's very good at is he's very good at talking fast and spewing stupid things. He's very good at appealing. He's very skilled at appealing to idiots.
I think you should debate him.
I would love to
call him out right now.
I'll call it Ben Shapiro right now. I mean, I'll debate Jordan Peterson. I'll
Really?
debate anyone. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, obviously I'm not going to debate
I'd want
Jordan.
to debate anyone if I could, but I wouldn't win, probably.
I don't know. Debating people. Oh, I would never debate Jordan Peterson on psychology because he probably know more than me.
Yeah.
And I don't think I have major disagreements with him there. Well, no, anything that I would have disagreement with, I'll defend myself. And if I lose, I'll accept it. I'll take it like a man. But I'll debate. No fear. But no, the problem with conservatives is so they find it okay in order to spread misinformation because honestly, and this something has to do with, I guess, your argument of lower IQ. Oh, it definitely could be that they don't trust authorities. They're anti-intellectual. It's pretty common. That might be why they're more susceptible to believing grand conspiracies that they're these elites, lizard people who are using universities and Dr. Seuss to control all of us. I can totally
there's
see that.
definitely like actual valid reasons that they just extrapolate from. So like there's definitely like bias at the universities. A huge bias.
Is there a bias against maximizing human well-being?
No, there's a bias against conservatives.
I mean, there's a bias against stupid people, and you can kind of interchange those two things.
I mean, I think. Well, you don't really go to like a super liberal university, but
I go to a university.
I don't think UTD is like that.
No, it's pretty liberal.
I mean, the culture. I mean, I just think so. I think there are certain ideas, conservative ideas, that you cannot really say very. I mean, you might get kicked out. Okay.
Oh, that get kicked out? Yeah, there are totally.
There are plenty. Like
name one that isn't actually pretty bad. Name a decent conservative take that's unoffensive, doesn't really harm anyone, that would get you kicked out of a university.
No, but that thing is unoffensive. So like, why does offense? So
okay, remove offense. Something that's true. Something conservatives believe in that's true that would get you kicked off a college campus. I fail to think of those.
Some gender study stuff. Like for example, do you know what is this? James Damore from Google? He got like kicked out of Google for writing this memo about.
I mean, that's not a university; that's a private company.
Yeah, but
I think that's a little different. A private company will fire anyone who ruins their image. The fact that he became public and he was ruining their image, they would fire him. Mm-hmm. That would have nothing to do with what he said, but just the optics of how it looked. I think a university is a little different.
Yeah, I feel like if I was in university and I was publishing something like that, I would get huge.
Would you be harassed for what you believe? Probably. Would you be kicked out by the institution? I find that a little hard to believe. And I think the only reason the institution
I actually remember this one professor who got kicked out for something like that.
Really?
Yeah, or at least like suspended or something. Yeah, it was something about race, but he did some research on race and he got kicked out. Which
did you get kicked out because
I understand how it'd be offensive and.
Did you get kicked out because his information was wrong?
Here's the thing, I don't think so. Or at least like even if it was wrong, it's not necessarily like more wrong than any other wrong paper that would have been published that was not.
Okay, if there was no malintent and he wasn't really wrong, or at least there was a good methodology for a study, I mean, kicking him out, that's just bending to the mob. Mm-hmm. I can understand if you think that, if I invite the speaker or I keep this professor on campus, the kids are going to riot, and you're like, okay, don't come in so we don't have a riot. I can totally understand. If you want to say colleges, that's happening in colleges, and there's evidence of that, yeah, I would agree that college is stupid. That's definitely a bias. Okay. And I think...
So all I'm saying is that, yes, there are definitely biases in college against conservatives, but conservatives, they take that and they extrapolate it to like even like scientific organizations when it comes to COVID and stuff like that. And
I mean, but science is pretty anti-conservative. I mean, it's anti-wrong, anti-misinformation, anti-stupidity. I mean, I feel like they're extrapolating the right direction. The problem is they're not the victims.
Mhm. Yeah, there's some overlap between those two, though. Yeah, sometimes it's not overlap, but yeah. Where are we going?
Misinformation.
Yes, misinformation.
Look, here's ultimately the truth, right? This is something I can never say to a person. I can't say to a person that they're stupid. The moment I say them, if they are stupid, it doesn't matter if they are or they're not. The moment I say them that they're stupid, they're not going to listen to me anymore.
Yeah.
That's ultimately the truth. It's very important to be rhetorically effective in dealing with fake news.
Why are you calling conservatives stupid?
I'm not calling any individual stupid. Look, me on this podcast is a little different than me face to face. Me face to face, me on this podcast is much more about how I'm feeling. Me face to face is much more about what I'm doing.
What if a conservative is listening to this?
Fuck you, change your mind.
Nice.
Yeah, but no, actually. So if you're a conservative and you are open to changing your mind, I love you. If you have dumb ideas, everyone has dumb takes. Everyone has stupid beliefs. I'm not making a moral judgment on that. If you're willing to change your mind, I love you forever. I'll give you a hug right now. Most people are not.
Here's
like
the thing. Here's the problem. You can't change someone's mind if you assume that they're wrong, or if you assume that they're stupid or their views are wrong. Because like, you have to ask them questions for themselves to figure out how they're wrong, because they won't believe you. It's highly antagonistic.
No. So one of my
Yeah,
favorite
just like
tools to asking someone is, what evidence can I show you to change your mind? It's a very rhetorically effective tool.
Yeah.
Because then you're effectively, if they answer there's no evidence, they're a lost cause. I mean, be kind to them, be nice to them. You're not going to move them on anything. But if they do say, "Oh, I would love information like this," so something like if I prove to you that COVID, what evidence could I show you that COVID-19 was not created by China as a bioweapon? I ask them that. They think they don't really have an answer. It's at least the space for me to say, if there's no evidence that I can prove that it's not, what is the evidence that proves that it is?
Wait, is that even like is that even fake news?
That COVID-19 was created by China as a bioweapon against the United States?
Yeah.
I feel like it's pretty fake news.
I mean, have you researched that, or is that just like? Because I don't know. I've
Wait,
heard that.
so-
I've heard someone on multiple times on Joe Rogan, talking about this, and
Joe Rogan interviews idiots. Just like
I
putting
mean,
that out there.
they've done research on this. Well, research as in like they've looked into it. Like
Look into it.
Yeah.
Look into it.
look into it.
Okay.
Eddie Bravo.
Anything that comes out of Eddie Bravo's mouth is.
But that wasn't Eddie Bravo. But
Okay. Look, no. Here's ultimately the thing. If you are asserting that it was a bioweapon from China to target the U.S., that is a fantastical claim. Fantastical claims need fantastic evidence. There is not substantial evidence to prove that.
Well, there's evidence to suspect that.
There's evidence that it's possibly leaked from a lab. That's entirely possible. If someone says that I believe it could be a lab leak, no misinformation there. I think it's more likely to be a lab leak, maybe depending on their sources. There's a lot of room for error. That's hard to say that that's misinformation. It definitely was from a lab. Okay, that's misinformation. We don't know that for sure. It definitely was from a lab in China, used it as a bioweapon to destroy America. Okay, you're past the
Okay,
point of
wait.
saving.
That's actually true. Like, I mean, bioweapon. Okay, yeah. I don't think it's from a bioweapon, but
So
I think the lab thing is definitely a possibility.
Possibility, definitely. I don't have enough evidence.
Mm-hmm.
I would love more evidence. Please, Joe Biden, do at least one good thing in your life and give us that evidence. I mean, you've done other good things, but give us this evidence, Joe Biden. No, I would love to see more evidence. I'd love to know. If it's a lab leak, okay, now we know, don't do gain-of-function research. It's very dangerous. If it isn't a lab leak, I mean, all right, let's be better at treating our environment well so we don't get another vaccine from, or we don't get another disease from random animals that have been forced to live with humans now. So it changes a lot of stuff that we do. I care about getting the truth. Stuff that we say now could be misinformation in the future. That's entirely possible. My goal is not to say that if you spread misinformation, you're a terrible person. It's that when you when you say anything, be very cognizant that you did your due diligence. When you say something, you have a responsibility. You have the responsibility to make sure what you're saying is defensible by you. Right? Any position that I say on this podcast, I will defend. And if I'm not able to sufficiently defend it, I will change my mind. But I will take the responsibility there. What we need to do is encourage people to be more responsible with the words that they use. Unfortunately, people are not. So, Daniel, how do you convince people to be more responsible with the words that they use? You're actually a very responsible person whenever you say anything. You almost never say anything too outlandish that you can't substantiate. So, how do you encourage other people to do that? Because I've been a total failure at it.
Podcast. You know someone called Julia Galiff? She has a really awesome YouTube channel with some. She's a very rational person, but
Mhm.
she talked about something called the scout mindset, which is basically like when you're trying to figure things out in the world, you should be a scout. So like, let's say like back then you had um different roles that you'd play in a tribe. Like you could be the warrior, you could be the farmer, you could be the scout.
Mhm.
So the warrior is meant to just protect whatever he loves. So that'd be the village, right? And then the scout would be someone who just goes out trying to search for things.
Mhm.
And in the intellectual sphere, you should want to be the scout and
Yeah.
searching for the truth rather than the warrior and defending the truth. Well, I guess, I mean,
The warrior defends something tangible, right? That's no different than a political activist, a person trying to make a difference.
mhm.
Now, there are a lot of political activists who have misguided aims. I'm trying to think of a liberal who had dumb takes. Sure. The movement to ban guns, or yeah, I guess ban guns. If you're an activist against guns and you say, okay, this is a great threat to people, and you start saying that, okay, mass shootings are very common, and they are very common, but that making guns illegal will stop that. There's not a lot of evidence that banning guns, well, unless if you take Australia, who did a massive gun buyback program, uh, will substantially reduce gun violence. And you then have to make the argument that we have the capability to buy back guns in the United States, where there are literally more guns than people in this country. When you're making this activist claim, when you're a warrior, you're overlooking a lot of truths. That okay, some of the solutions you're proposing just might not be practical. And I think, again, you're trying to do good. You don't see the whole picture. I can understand that. I can be very empathetic with you. I can't give you a lot of sympathy. I can give you a lot of empathy on this, which is I can understand you're trying to do good. You're trying to do what you believe is right. You're a little lost. If you're open to being changed, if you're open to change how you address these solutions, if you're open to change your tactics as a warrior, you're a good person. You're doing the right thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? The
Yeah.
biggest problem with misinformation is that people, even after realizing it that it is completely false, it's two things. One, they're negligent in verifying it. They're also then unwilling to correct themselves.
Okay.
They're contributing a lot of harm to the world that way.
So I think something that you have to think about when tackling, well, okay, who are we even talking about? Are we talking to people who want to change other people's mind, or are we talking to?
You're also talking to me. I want to change people's minds.
Okay, interesting. Because so at least for me, I am not immune to cognitive, no, what is it called?
Cognitive dissonance?
No. Like where you're biased towards things that you already believe. There's something.
Selection bias?
No, it's confirmation bias. Yes.
Confirmation bias, yes.
I actually, I believe that, or no, it is my goal not to have confirmation bias,
Mhm.
but I notice myself doing it a lot of times, and I realize that just introspecting about it and paying attention to how I feel when I have the urge to do that,
Mhm.
I think it comes from laziness. It
Definitely.
comes from laziness in that it's convenient to believe in something and not look at the evidence because you feel secure in your own worldview. And I think that's like I think it's actually very rational to do because you cannot be 100% a skeptic. Otherwise, you'll be like paranoid. You'll have no direction in life because if you are completely skeptical and open-minded, this is something I was thinking about. You can't actually be 100% open-minded because if you're 100% open-minded, you'll never get to conclusions because
Mhm.
you'll start being skeptical. You start questioning every single assumption that you have. So there's actually like a balance. There's no. I mean, you don't want cognitive bias. No, confirmation
So,
bias to be zero.
I'll
You want
reject
it to be
this.
like a balance.
Because one of the best tools we have to understand the world is science, and science is nothing but constantly doubting yourself.
Not really.
Science is the enterprise of replacing error with ignorance. We never say something in science that the case is settled. We say, to the best of our knowledge, this is what we believe.
But that's not how it works in practice. And there's
No.
so many scientific theories. Like, I mean, what was it like in the 19 something? Doctors were saying cigarettes were good for you, right?
Yeah, so to the best of our knowledge, we thought cigarettes were good. Our knowledge changed, our recommendations changed along with it.
Mm-hmm.
But we always have to test and always be skeptical of ourselves, everything that we believe. And when we get different results, we get enough of them that are replicable, we change what we believe. We're constantly doubting ourselves to do the right thing. The same thing happens in jiu-jitsu, right? You can never think that you're good. Because the moment you think that you're good, you have that arrogance. you'll never actually be good. There's always more to learn. There's always more to improve. The moment you say I have mastered something, you have stunted your growth. Same thing with
Here's
science.
where I disagree, which is that even though you're saying this, you don't actually believe it.
No, I believe this entirely. If there's a scientific consensus that came out that what's something that I hate? I hate avocados. I absolutely hate them. Hate them with a undying passion. If scientific evidence came out that avocados would help me with I don't know, reducing the risk of brain injury, I'll eat them.
Speaking about brain injury, though, let's, for example, you have to come to a conclusion eventually. You have to.
Well, the conclusion comes now. I'm
How do I
always
put
in a
this?
concluded place, but I'm willing to change my conclusion.
No, but like, what? To what extent do you question yourself? Like, are you spending 5 minutes a day researching? Are you spending 10 minutes a day searching up? Is this really true?
So
Like, there's a level of
I have a
open-mindedness
rule.
that is crippling to yourself.
I
feel like at one point I was way too open-minded, and I think I still might be, because I consider too much. I consider, like,
So you're describing paralysis by
yes,
analysis.
paralysis by analysis, sort of.
Okay.
There's paralysis by skepticism.
So I think we need to draw the line of what level. There's like obviously an optimal marginal return on analysis. Obviously, you're an economist. You can calculate this. Obviously, if I spend all my time reading every obscure scientific journal, I might not necessarily get significant more understanding of the world than if I just read the latest meta-analysis. Right? Obviously, there's some
You know
marginal
what's
utility.
interesting though? I think the conspiracy theorists actually probably might be more open-minded, actually, in a sense, because they're the ones looking at the obscure papers. They're the ones looking at the obscure opinions and bringing them to light.
No, they spend a ridiculous amount of time researching something, but they're so stupid and dumb at researching, they always come to bad conclusions.
So I guess another thing you have to consider, though, is, so even if you're super open-minded and you spend a lot of time researching and questioning your beliefs, you still might be led astray to the wrong conclusions, because you can be motivated. You can be asking yourself questions and looking for answers with the wrong motivation. You might be looking at it.
Like, prove to me that Bill Gates isn't a lizard person.
Or
Bill Gates not a lizard person.
Where I was going is, it's like, how do I say this? Like, let's say you unconsciously have this desire to come to contrarian opinions. And so unconsciously, when you're questioning yourself, you might, move towards crazy conclusions, even though you think you're just trying to be objective.
I mean, yeah, there are definitely some contrarians are definitely susceptible to this, and a lot of people are susceptible to contrarian thinking like this. But I think this is ultimately the problem. We, as a rule of thumb, we have to put our faith into people who know more than us. We do that whenever we go to a doctor. We go to that every time we go to a car repairman. We put faith in people who we think know more than us. Sometimes they turn out to be scams, right? People put a lot of faith into Dr. Fauci, and then after his emails leaked, we found out, okay, some of his deeper motivations and some of the horrible things he was willing to do.
Well, what were they, by the way?
Oh, so you remember the controversy about masks, right? At the beginning of the pandemic, he basically said, "Oh, masks don't work. Don't buy a mask." That was a statement. It wasn't because at the time they knew that the best scientific evidence that masks didn't work. The best scientific evidence was that masks did have some impact on reducing COVID transmission. He said so because he wanted to make sure that there was no shortage of masks for frontline healthcare workers. So his intent, he lied for a good outcome, what he believed, and that destroyed his credibility. Now it's very difficult to take him seriously because he wasn't being truthful to us. So at some level, you have to put your faith in some, and you might have to engage in some conspiracy thinking, right? Who killed JFK? I'm pretty sure it's the CIA. It's a mild conspiracy theory.
There are like many conspiracy theories that turn out to be true.
Yeah, there are.
That's the thing.
So that unfortunately emboldens a lot of idiots. But it's amount of doing investigation. And look, the reason why I'm quick to judge on conspiracy theorists, I think it's wrongly because as a society, we are not very lenient with people who are wrong. We don't give people the right to be wrong. So when we tell people that they're wrong, they double down on their bad decisions.
Yeah, that's sort of like, okay, me in jiu-jitsu, if someone's going too hard, I'm afraid to do better. Because I'm afraid that if I, for example, like try to pass their guard, they're gonna sweep me so hard and like bang my head. So I like just like I just like stay in their garden. Like
A wise man once said, the person I trained
so
with, he said that I have an issue of suicide by bravery. So I go in, I get swept, I get
yeah. So
dead.
I completely agree with you that you need to have an open hand, like keep an open hand for anyone who wants to change their mind.
Look, I try to lead by example, right? If I say something completely dumb, I will own up to it. I will apologize. I say I said something dumb. I was wrong. I'll fix myself. I'll be very honest with you. I can lead
Okay,
by
then
example.
then you probably shouldn't call conservatives stupid. Because if they, I mean, do you really think they're gonna like come and talk to you after that?
I have a hard time believing that conservatives are not stupid. I'm open to having my mind changed. The shit that they say and the things that they vote for and the things that they support, it's really hard for me to not come to that conclusion. Now, I met a lot of conservative people who are very good people, very good to me, very kind to me. They're incredible people. But the moment it came about thinking about broader ways of fixing problems, they made all the wrong decisions. And I think that, again, intelligence is skill specific. You might be intelligent in interpersonally dealing with people. Maybe you're very good with your hands, very skilled in certain things. You're bad at solving large scale problems.